To all of you, and very warm welcome to all the participants for this 3 days webinar series on applications of omics in climate smart agriculture. So this is an interesting area which we thought will make aware all the students, faculty members about the recent happenings which are going on in the area of plant genomics as well as plant phenomics. So we have very interesting lectures lined up during the next 3 days, and I hope everybody will enjoy and will learn something new out of these interesting lectures. So just to begin with, let me thank all the participants who profusely came forward and registered. So we, in nutshell, just want to inform you that we received more than 2,000 registrations in first 2 days for our omics seminar. So we have to stop the registration process because and now we are running with full capacity. Maybe in next few minutes we will be joined by many more participants. So we received application from almost all the states of India except Goa and Manipur. Rest of India is already covered in our application process, and we have also selected participants from across the all the states, as well as we have participation from 3 different countries abroad, Australia, and 2 countries from Africa. The participants, I also welcome them. And we also have almost 1/3 of the total participation from the faculty members from across the India, as well as many postdoctorate fellows, PhD scholars and master scholars working in different disciplines of life sciences, including plant biotechnology, horticulture, botany, plant pathology, and related streams. So once again, I welcome you all for this interesting webinar series. And before we start, we also have a presence of our principal investigator, Dr. S.D. Gorantiwar. I request him to just interact with the participants and give introductory remarks. After his introductory remarks, we'll start with the our lecture series. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Very good morning to all the participants of this webinar series. On behalf of Mahatma Phule Krishi Vidyapith Rahuri and the Center for Advanced Agricultural Science and Technology on Climate Smart Agriculture and Water Management, I welcome all the participants and the experts of this webinar series. Okay. On this occasion, I would like to take the opportunity to tell in short about the project under which we are organizing this webinar series. This project is Center for Advanced Agricultural Science and Technology, which is abbreviated as CAST, on Climate Smart Agriculture and Water Management. This particular center is being implemented under Indian Council of Agricultural Research, National Agricultural Higher Education Program. And this program is being aided by the World Bank. So we abbreviate this again as NAHEP. We have 4 components under this program. The first component is to develop the capacity of the young researchers, postgraduate students, and faculties for the different aspects of the climate smart agriculture and water management. For this purpose, we organize several training programs, brainstorming sessions, seminars, and conventions. Okay. We had been organizing all these activities on campus at Rahuri or Pune since last 1.5 years. But during the period of lockdown due to COVID-19, our teams thought that we should organize such kind of the programs online. So this is the 10th online program which we are starting from today, this webinar series. Second component is to strengthen and to develop new academic program. For this, we have developed postgraduate diploma in climate smart agriculture and water management. Okay. This is module-based program, and we are about to start this postgraduate diploma in the 2-3 months after getting the approval from the ICR and other bodies. The second academic program is to start the postdoctoral research program in climate smart agriculture and water management. In fact, we have already started this program. This program is for 1 year and 2 years duration, and you can find the details from our website. At the same time, we strengthen our MSc, MTech and PhD programs for the climate smart agriculture and water management. Third component is to develop the means and aids for the farmers based on the advanced technologies such as drones, hyperspectrometry, remote sensing, GIS, robotics, etc. We have started to work on this, and last component is to develop the climate smart villages and the digital villages, and to implement the technologies which which is being developed under this CAST in the selected villages. Okay? So these are in short our 4 components, 4 objectives. I again welcome all the experts and the participants for this webinar series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gorontiwar sir, for your introductory remarks, and we hope that we'll have a very fantastic series of lectures during this during the next 3 days. So, for the information of the participants, we have already circulated the brief biodata of the expert before the start of the session on the group. But just to mention few lines about Dr. Joy Kumar Roy. Presently, he is working as scientist F in the Agriculture Biotechnology Division of the National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institute, which is also abbreviated as NABI at Mohali, Punjab. It is the Autonomous Institute of Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, specifically focusing with the food biotechnology component. So Dr. Joy Kumar Roy, he did his PhD in agricultural botany from Chaudhary Charan Singh University, Meerut in 2001, and subsequently he did his 2 postdoctorate fellowships, one from Canada, followed by next postdoctoral fellowship from University of Minnesota, USA. So after spending almost 7-8 years as a postdoctoral fellow, he came back to India and joined as a scientist in the National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, and then subsequently he joined National Agri-Biotechnology Institute, National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institute. Since the start of the institute, he is working in that institute, and his work is very interesting because nowadays we know that wheat, not many diabetic patients prefer wheat, but the group led by Dr. Joy Kumar Roy, they have come up with a very fantastic story of wheat, how the utilization of wheat by the body can be lowered down, or its calorific value can be lowered down so that body can absorb wheat, and that what experiment he has done, he is going to present before us. So welcome to Dr. Joy Kumar Roy, and now I request him to start his presentation. Over to you, Joy sir.
So this is our campus. You can see I am working at Department of Biotechnology, National Agri-Food Biotechnology Institute. So this is our campus. Yes. So a starch is the, the starch is the major component of the grain. So most of the cereal crop, whether it's a wheat, barley, rye, rice, maize, and all of them grain contain more than 70% of their fraction is the starch. The starch is the major component, and this starch has lot of nutritional value, processing quality value. So for example, it has a big market at the global level. So we can see that in 2018, that business was estimated was $10 billion US, and it is projected to have $12 billion by 2023. And most of this cereal grain we use to make our different type of food product like chapati, rice, pasta, all those things. So these are all different food products we eat, and most of them are the starch. But it has also other application, non-conventional application, like it go into food and beverage. It has other like medicine, pharmaceutical, and other paper industries. So these are all different applications that it has. So therefore, starch is a very important at the industrial level, at our food product level. And most of this starch you can see under the microscope. You can see if potassium iodide, or you can see that it is the blue color grain. This is a starch granule, and each starch granule is composed of different concentric ring structure. So this is under the electron microscope. You can see this structure. Starch, you can see under the scanning electron microscope, a single starch granule. You can see that it is had a highly structured molecule. So you can see the concentric ring of type of the structure. If we can do the diagrammatic representation, you can see that it is composed of two fractions. One is the linear fractions, large linear fraction, that is called amylose, and the other is the highly branched structure, and that is called the amylopectin. So most of the cereal grain contain 25% of amylose and 75% of amylopectin. And amylose is the linear molecules, and amylopectin is highly branched structure. And this amylose is less digestible by our guts. Therefore, this high amylose starch is called resistant starch because it resists or slowly digestible in our guts. So therefore, amylose has got the nutritional value. It has nutritional value which is good for the diabetes and obese. So therefore, our target was to increase the amylose fraction so that we can increase the resistant starch content so that it will good for the obese and obesities. It has other health benefits. I'm not going to much detail, but it has so many other health benefits associated with the resistant starch. So why resistant starch is becoming so important? Because this is considered as the good dietary fibers. So this is the considered good dietary fiber. Earlier, starch was not considered as a good because it's always considered that's a high calorie value. Therefore, starch, nobody likes starch. People avoid, particularly obese and overage people, that avoid to take the cereal grains because it has the starch. But now the starch, the amylose fraction of the starch is considered as the good dietary fibers. And it has classified under different type, resistant starch, 1 to 5. What we are working on the resistant starch 2 type, which is the tightly unpacked and ungelatinized starch. This is present in our grain. And I have talked about these are 2 fractions, amylose and amylopectin. Amylose is largely linear, it is a slowly digestible, whereas amylopectin is highly branched and it is a highly digestible. Why it is a highly digestible? Because it has a surface structure is in such a way that whatever the amylase we have, that is the amylase, that is enzyme which digests the starch, whatever the amylase and alpha glucosidase, these are 2 different type of the starch which can easily digest amylopectin, but they cannot digest amylose, slowly digest, because the surface doesn't allow him to bind properly and therefore go for digestion. So this is the brief about this. So what is the content of resistant starch in our food grain? You can see the plantain has the large amount of the resistant starch. It's about 50% resistant starch is present in the plantain. Therefore, green plantain, green unripe banana is very good for health. It contains very high percentage of the resistant starch. Whereas rice has about 1.6%. And these are the right panel of this slide. You can see these are the resistant starch contained in our wheat-based food product. You can see the max highest number of the resistant starch is a 4%. It is present in upma, then halwa, suji halwa. But otherwise, this resistant starch content is less than 0.5% in our chapati. So these are the reported by the different researchers in India. And you can buy this resistant starch in the market. It is in the global market, not in India. And these are the different products you can find on the Google search. You can see there, and you can see most of this resistant starch is coming from the corn, maize, not from the wheat and other. And these are other application of the resistant starch, particularly in related to the intestinal problem issues, dietary fiber, and other kind of the micronutrient absorption. So there is a review paper written by Lockyer and Nugent. You can see this review paper. It has given more detail about the application of resistant starch. If anybody wants, you can go and see this review paper. So starch is has its own biosynthesis pathway. It's called starch biosynthesis pathway. You can this starch is composed of amylose, amylopectin. Amylose is biosynthesized by the one enzyme, which is a very important key enzyme for amylose biosynthesis, that is called GBSS1. That is the granule bond starch synthase, which is synthesized from ADP glucose to amylose. Whereas amylopectin is a highly branched structure which synthesized by a combination of different enzymes, including GBSS1, different isoform, starch synthase, starch branching enzyme, debranching enzyme, phosphorylase. So there are different combination enzymes which make the amylopectin. Amylose is largely biosynthesized by GBSS1. So my talk, this was some introductory talk about the starch, their health benefits, their application. So now I am going to talk about how we can do starch biosynthesis in agriculture biotechnology. So initially we try to see Indian wheat variety. I screened for the amylose variation in Indian population, and we couldn't find very much variation in amylose. It was hardly 20 to 30%. Therefore, my one option was either we go for transgenics, where we can do the either overexpression of GBSS1, or we can knock down this and then we can go for the amylose biosynthesis. We can increase the amylo content, but we wanted to go for the non-transgenic approach, classical breeding approach. Therefore, we opted for the EMS mutagenesis. This is ethyl methyl sulfonate which induce a single base mutation in the population. So we go for the EMS mutagenesis to develop a population so that we can have the variation for amylose. The second one, after that, from EMS mutant population, we can identify one or few high amylose line, and from that we can do the QTL mapping so that we can identify what are the different genetic factors, what are the gene transcription factor which is controlling amylose biosynthesis. And third was the high resolution QTL mapping a particular region and to identify a candidate gene and go for the validation of that gene. The other three component was the very important, because whenever we go for the high amylose biosynthesis, starch biosynthesis product, everybody asks about that, what is the product quality? The product quality is very important. Even you develop the high amylose starch wheat line, people always ask what is the product, what is the chapati quality, what about the nutrition health benefits. So these are the objective we have included in this our talk. So we can go by one. The first one was the development of EMS induced population for amylose. So initially we use one variety, Indian wheat variety. It is a C306. It is called, it's the best good chapati variety in India. It's a gold standard. So we started using this variety for EMS mutagenesis. So EMS mutation, we go for different percentage of the EMS, and from that we selected 0.2% of EMS, which can generate about 60% of the lines can germinate, and 40% was, could not. So therefore 0.2% EMS mutagenesis, we start from that, and then we develop the population. We grow with the single spike to row, and finally we come up with the, right now we have received in this year M10 EMS mutagenesis population. So we start screening this for amylose in M3 generation. So we develop a method for identify the high amylose, because that is methodology is very important, because amylose we can estimate with using the potassium iodide solution. So it's a very simple solution you can find in the market. So we use that solution and we develop a half-sheet method, and where half-sheet method we can cut half and then we stain with this potassium iodide solution, and we take the time, how much time it take to generate the color. So suppose if one line develop a deep color in a very fast way, blue dark color in a very shorter time of period, that means it contains a very high amylose, because this potassium iodide specifically bind with the amylose, and therefore, so this is indication of the amylose. when it take the longer time to develop the color, that means amylose is less. So we develop a matrix for time taken to develop the color, and this is a prediction of the amylose. And we develop a prediction model where the time taken to develop the color is indicative of amylose. So you can see that it was 81% of the correlation we have found for prediction of this amylose. So we use this time to develop the color as indication of what percentage of amylose containing these lines. So from this EMS mutagenized population, EMS mutation population, we identify 10 high amylose line, and it has the resistor starch up to 45%. So these lines become our important for the further studies. And this one of these line we have used for QTL mapping. So our strategy was we use this one of the C3 variety. We induce the mutation. From this we have identified one of the high amylose line, and that in M5 we cross with one of the high yielding variety. When we started this work at that time, WH1105, this is the high yielding variety. At that time we use that high yielding variety to cross with one of the high amylose line, TSC75, and from that we develop a population. And for this study I am presenting here the mapping population we use is a F2 and F3 population we use for mapping. Right now I have the F6 population right now, and then I have also used the backcross strategy with the C306 to identify validate the candidate gene effect. So this was the strategy for my QTL mapping and validation purpose. So you can see that we cross this high amylose with this WH1105 is a high yielding variety. Amylose content is only 23%, whereas this line has the about 64% amylose. So this we develop this population. This is a strategy. In the left panel you can see how we have done from single spike to row studies. This is the normal classical breeding approach, so I'm not going to much detail about that. So we first in F1 we try to identify the molecular marker. We use the SSR marker to identify which is the heterozygous line, and the one of the heterozygous line we taken to the advance the generation into F2, F3 and up to F6 generation. So you can see the amylose distribution. So in F2 we did amylose study. This was the half seed method, and from you can see that is showing the normal distribution. In F3 we extracted the starch, and from starch we did the amylose estimation, and you can see the normal distribution. So both in F2 and F3 we have seen the normal distribution of this amylose content ranging from about less than 10% up to the more than 60% of the amylose we have seen that. So our next strategy was to do the genotyping. So genotyping, we use the GBS method. This is the fastest method we can do. We can go for the whole genome sequencing, we can go for transcriptome, but it's a very expensive or it's a time consuming, taking time. So we go for the very faster way, that is the GBS method, genotyping by sequencing approach. We use 94 F2 lines for genotyping, and where we use the two different enzyme combination, SPH1 and MLU-C1, to make a library for the GBS. We generated this on Illumina sequencing 2x150 pair end sequencing, and from that we generated for each line we generated 4 million reads, and from this we identify about the 7,200 homozygous SNPs. That means this SNPs is homozygous in both the parents, and from there we identify the good quality SNPs. It was 1572 good high quality SNPs. There is no linkage distortion in this. So I'm going to more detail about this, how we have gone for the GBS. So this is the steps. These are the software we use for analysis of the GBS data, where we develop FastQC, where we develop BWS software, SAM tools, and BCF tools. So these are the different tools we have used to identify these genomes. So you can see the average GC quality was more than 44%, and the total number of the SNPs we have identified was about 2.5 lakhs between two parents. Then after filtering different criteria we use, ultimately we come up with about 1500 SNPs. This is the strategy for the linkage mapping. So once we have this very good quality SNPs that is not showing any linkage distortion, it was under the linkage ratio, and though using those SNPs, we use the software for linkage mapping, that is the ICIM software. This is the software you use for the making the linkage map construction. So this is the sum of the parameters is given here, and using these parameters, we using this software, we map these SNPs on the wheat genomes. And you can see that wheat genome, if you know about the wheat, it is a polyploid, it's a hexaploid, it's made of 3 genomes, A, B, and D. And this, after the linkage map, we found about 700 on the A genome, about 700, also 680 SNPs on the B genome, and we found very low amount of the number of SNPs on the D genome. So D genome has a very less representation of the SNPs in comparison to A and B genomes. So these are the map length. You can see that we can see the map density. Map density for A and B was 2.5 centimorgan per SNP between the SNPs, whereas the D genome has the very 6.7. So therefore, the D genome is very less representation, but still we got a very good marker density, which we can go a better QTL mapping result from this map. So this was the QTL mapping strategy, where we use composite interval mapping for using the QTL cartographer to study this QTL map. So you can use this software, you can use different mapping population. We use F2 here, we use Kosambi function to determine this mapping function for QTL, and we use 1000 permutation and for going for this QTL mapping. And we use format A, B, H. A for the homozygous for one parent, B is the homozygous for other parents, and H is the heterozygous. So this is the format we use to develop the QTL map. So this is the QTL map for this amylose variation. So you can see these are the distribution over the chromosome. Some of the chromosome are not having this QTL, but most of the chromosome has this QTL for this high amylose. Therefore, this is a genome-wide distribution of amylose variation. And this study is the first time nobody has reported QTL mapping for amylose biosynthesis in wheat. There is no report. This is the first time we have reported this. We have communicated this in publication. So hopefully we will have this publication. So I am going a little bit more detail about the major QTLs we identify. So we use 2 environments. One environment was F2 population, where we have identified the QTLs. So these are the 6 major QTLs where the percentage of variation is more than 10%. We basically identified 30 QTL, but out of them, 6 QTL were major QTL, where more than 10% of the variation was there. And the additive effect was the negative additive effect was there, because this is coming from the high amylose parent, and therefore this indicates that this is coming from one of the parent, and therefore this is a high amylose parent which is the contributing this allele to this mapping population. And the high maximum we have identified this percentage of variation was about 31%. And then we also go for the second environment, that was in F3 generation, where we identify 7 major QTLs. So total 11 major QTL we identify. Out of that, only 2 QTLs on 7A and 7D were present in both the environment. The next strategy was, once we have the QTL, major QTL, we have taken one of the stable QTL, and we have seen what is the gene present within this interval. So now we have the whole genome sequence, reference genome sequence for wheat. So it was very easy for us to see the interval and the position of this interval, and then the corresponding position on the whole genome sequence, and from that we can identify the number of genes. So you can see this for this all this major QTL, you can see the number of genes are present. Most of these genes are present in a very large amount, very large amount. It's very difficult to say how to come down. You can see it is a 200, 500 genes are present in this QTL. It's a big distance between this QTL. So therefore, this map is required more high resolution. That means we need to have a larger number of progeny and as well as large number of markers we need to pull in so that we can go for very close to gene. But from that, one of the major QTL region we identify, that was on the 7A, and we try to identify what are the candidate genes. Luckily, this one of the stable QTL on 7A, we look for the number of genes, and from that gene, we are able to identify the gene which are responsible for the starch metabolism. And luckily, we identify one of the gene, GBSS1. You remember earlier slide I mentioned that GBSS1 is responsible for amylose biosynthesis. So you can see that in a starch metabolism pathway, from that we identify 3 genes. Out of them, GBSS1 was the gene we are able to identify in this QTL region. So therefore, after that, we go for the sequencing of this GBSS1 in both the parents. And we able to identify a allele in this exon number 12. So basically, this is the exon 11 because it has a 12 exon, but the open reading frame is only from the exon 2. So therefore, total number of exon is only 11. So on the last exon, we are able to identify a novel allele. It's a novel allele, never reported this. And this novel allele was the responsible for the amylose biosynthesis. How we have done? Because we did some enzyme assay and expression analysis. From that, we say that this is the most potential candidate gene for high amylose biosynthesis. So you can see this. So we did for this GBSS1 gene, which we able to identify from the QTL mapping, where we did do the qRT-PCR. We can see in high amylose the expression is difference expression is very high in high amylose line, whereas in parent or is a mutant parent wild type, and also the one of the mapping polymerase expression level is very low. Then after that we went for the Western blotting. Western blotting, because Western blotting is the confirmation of this. So we clone this gene and we express this protein, we develop some antibody, and by using antibody we identify, we did the Western blotting, and we can see that in high amylose that protein band is very little bit thicker than the parent line, and it's indicate that the expression level is very high. Then after that we went for the enzyme assay, whether to see that whether this high amylose line has the higher enzyme activity for this GBSS1. And you can see that this high amylose mutant line has the specific activities higher than the parent. And we also see we did the Km value. This is the enzyme activity rate, and we plotted with against the concentration of different substrate, and you can see that Km value is mutant line is very low in compared to the parent, and that indicates that it high GBSS mutant GBSS allele has a very high affinity for the substrate. So the low K value indicate that is a very high enzyme activity. Very high enzyme efficiency is a very high. Therefore, GBSS1 has very high efficiency in case of mutant line, and therefore this is able to have synthesize more amylose than in the parent comparisons. So this was the one validation of this GBSS1 enzyme, and this is the novel allele. I have not mentioned here because we are applying for the patent for this mutant allele, so that I have not indicated where is the mutation, but we identify this novel allele. So once we will patent, we will release this mutant position and exact the sequence of that. So this is a one story where we are able to identify one allele in GBSS1 novel allele, which is responsible high amylose biosynthesis. But I cannot rule out there may be some more genes may be involved, but we are right now focusing on GBSS1, and GBSS1 is responsible for this. The next, our analysis was, further study was whether this high amylose mutant line, the product quality of the high amylose mutant line is very good as compared to C306 or not. Therefore, we went for the product evaluation. So these are the chapati. We did chapati quality parameter analysis for this one, baking, texture, color, and sensory. I'm not going to much detail, but I will just go through that how the chapati for this high amylose mutant line. And you can see that these are different parameters for chapati quality, baking time, and puffing height and softness. And these are the, you can see that this high amylose line has as good as our C306. That is a good chapati variety. And this is the one of the market floor. So we have did the comparison with the market floor. We've got the market floor, and you can see this is a parameter. So this is the market floor, and this is our parent line, and these are different mutant lines we have analyzed for this. And these are the different quality parameters. I'm not going to much detail, but you can see that. So from these, we identified two high amylose mutant line, TSC28 and TSC35. And you can see that overall quality, chapati quality of these two lines is as good as to the parent. So the chapati quality is as compared to our good chapati variety C306. So next level was to determine the nutritional value or health benefits of this high amylose mutant line. So what we did for this, we did in vitro glycemic index analysis, and using the DNS method, where we use the dialysis membrane, and we determine the glycemic response index value in vitro. And you can see that this C306 has about 52 in glycemic index value, whereas we have a number of mutant line. Two mutant line is about very low. It was 38 and 35. So this is about 30% lower glycemic index value than the parent line. This was in vitro studies, and this is a NABI result. And there we have given this line to ITC under the MOU, and ITC also calculated this in vitro glycemic index value. So you can see that this is the parent, which is the result come from the ITC, which make the Ashirvad data, and this is the NABI. And you can see the comparison with the two line, TSC2835 is, this is the two potential mutant line, high amylose line, where glycemic index value is 30% lower than the parent line. So it's a low glycemic line value, it's a reduced glycemic index view line. This is in vitro and studies. After the in vitro, then we go for the mice model. That is the in vivo mice model, where we go use the mice. This is the mice line C57BL6J. This is the mice line we use for a study for determining the glycemic index in the mice. So you can see that I'm not going to much result about that, but you can see that this is the glucose peak. You can see this is the graph. You can see where you can see the peak. This is the glucose peak. So we feed the mice glucose, another the mice with the our C306, and other mice with the two different mutant lines. Those are potential two mutant lines which conform with the in vitro, and then we are doing for the this mice. Mice study is a very difficult to do. Getting a license for doing this is a very difficult. So we only focused two lines which were very strong candidate, and you can see this peak area of this two mutant line is very lower than the C306. And this glycemic index value of this two mutant line was 57 or 59. It's a range from 55 to 57. You can see these two has the very lower than your parent variety. That is the C306 with the parent is the about 75, 76 is the glycemic index value. It is all well known that wheat has about 70 to 75 GI value. In comparison to that, our mutant line is about 57, 59. It's a 25-30% reduction in the glucose response in the GERDs in these mutant lines. So these two mutant line is become our very important. This is a low glycemic mutant line, or we can take into further. So this is the summary of these two mutant line for different parameters for starch quality. These are for in vitro GI value. You can in vivo GI value. These are this protein content, moisture, puff. These are different chapati quality. So this is the two mutant line we are targeting for going for the variety developmental and also for the commercialization. So we are doing effort. So we have contacted Dr. Rajveer Yadav at IRI, New Delhi, to develop into the variety program. So he has promised me that in next 3-4 years, we will have a variety from this mutant line. So we have a low glycemic mutant line variety, we can develop this one. And then we have signed MOU with the ITC. ITC has shown our interest. When we publish this paper, this result, ITC has contacted us, and under the MOU, we have given this line to them for further validation at their end. So we are now trying to develop a method or develop a what is the mechanism by which we can go for this for commercialization. So ITC has shown a very interest in this for these 2 lines. So this is the summary of my slide. So first, we didn't find any variation for amylose in Indian wheat variety. Therefore, we opted for the EMS mutagenesis. From EMS mutagenesis, we developed a population for amylose variation, and nobody has reported so far here. So this is the first time we developed a population for amylose, that is EMS population for amylose, where the amylose fraction is about 3 to 75%. Second, we developed a linkage map for using the SNP marker, and from that we identify the 11 major QTLs for this high amylose using this F2F3 population. And this is the first time also reported. Nobody has reported yet for this QTL map for high amylose in wheat. Rice and maize has, not in case of the wheat. Therefore, from that we identify through a QTL, one of the QTL we identify a candidate gene. This is a GBSS1. This is the key enzyme for amylose biosynthesis. We identify a SNPs through GBSS in this GBSS1. Through genotyping by sequencing, identify these SNPs, and this is novel SNPs which is responsible for this amylose biosynthesis. The next is that we have validated the chapati quality value of this high amylose mutant line, and it is as good as the C306, which is the gold standard, which go everywhere in India for having a good chapati value. And then we have in vitro and in vivo mice model study. We confirm what is the low GI value of reduced GI value of these lines. Now we are doing the steps for commercialization and variety development for this. With this summary, I would like to this is the lab group. This is the group which is working on this particular in amylose. So this is the Ankita Misra, which is the major role in developing this EMS mutation population and QTL mapping. So this are the rest of our students which are working in this area. In some way, somebody is working in different aspects of this amylose biosynthesis. And I would like to thank Pawan Kulwal and his team. And also I would like to our collaborator which have helped in developing this program for this starch quality in wheat. And this is Notesh Singh Benz from PAU Ludhiana. He has mentioned that I visited several times. He said that you work on the chapati quality variety, and this is the C306 he has given by him to me to go and work on that. And I also like to thank Dr. Dharampal Walia, IRI Regional Station Simla. So he is helping in developing this mapping population at oxygen. Dr. Rajveer Yadav, last year we have given this line to him to develop a variety so that we can go for the common people. And Dr. Napinder Singh, which is help in doing the biochemical analysis. And Dr. R.K. Gupta is helping from IIWBR Karnal. He's a director of wheat research earlier, who helping in give the Indian wheat variety for doing the analysis. And Dr. Praveen Chuneja is helping in this molecular breeding part. And I would also like to our collaborator in this program, Dr. T.R. Sharma. Now he is in ICR, and Srikant Mantri, and Dr. Vikas Rishi, he is helping me doing molecular biology, helping that. With that, I would like to thank you. Thank you very much. Hello.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joy Kumar sir. I would like to ask some of the questions the participants have asked in the chat box.
Yes.
One of the question is, what are the constraints while lowering the glycemic index?
Yes, glycemic index is first is in vitro you can do, but the major problem is the dialysis. So low glycemic estimation, the dialysis is the most important part. So you have to be very tricky to doing for in vitro analysis using the dialysis tube. The second one is the mice model. Is getting a license for doing mice studies are very difficult. They don't give you very large number of mice. They give very limited. We got about 48 mice doing different kind of the analysis because we have to use the stat. Using a stat, you need a large number of mice. You have number of controls, positive control, negative control in your application. So you don't get much mice. I could have done, I have a very large number of higher module line. I could have done for all the line for the mice experiment, but couldn't. Only 2 line we have done, and that is on the basis of which we got from in vitro analysis. So from in vitro, we identified 2 lines, and that 2 lines will go for the mice analysis. So constraint is there for getting the mice.
Thank you, sir. Most of the participants are asking.
Joy sir, there is one comment from Rajiv sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Joy sir.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I can hear
There is
you.
one comment from Raju, Dr. Raju Vashne.
Yeah.
So have you also planned for searching some haplotypes and not only alleles for better phenotype?
Yeah, we are doing, you know, it involve the money. So we are now doing for RILs. So for RILs, we are going for the doing the large scale sequencing and to identify the haplotype. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay. So thank you, Joy sir, for your excellent lecture and also congratulations to you for the wonderful work which you are doing for the first time in the country for reducing the glycemic index for our staple food wheat. So let me thank Dr. Joy Kumar Roy. I know there are several questions by the participants, but maybe because we have to finish the lecture in time, you can also directly contact Joy Kumar Roy for any query. He will be happy to answer all your questions. Okay, or you can also post those questions to us. We can forward them to Dr. Joy Kumar Roy. So thank you very much, sir, for